Hi, Josh.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you. Excited to get this week going. Happy Monday.
Long weekend.
Great. Thanks for sending me your video and your lesson plan. I saw the annotations on your video. I really appreciate that even though this assessment is for in task standards 4 and 5, that
Yeah.
you still incorporated standards 1, 2, 3, showing differentiation in your lesson planning. So good job integrating the previous knowledge that you've gained through this course into this next activity or assessment that we're doing. I so after reviewing your lesson plan, I the, I think the best feedback that I can give you, the most honest feedback that I can give you, is your lesson plan was very well detailed, well planned out. The feedback, I think this feedback session will be focused on asking you questions, because I'm interested to know more about how you understand the in-task standards for this activity. So let me move over to the Teach Now platform
All right.
and let's get this going. So for standards 4 and 5, 4 focuses on content knowledge. So that's your subject knowledge, right? And
Yeah.
then in task standard 5 focuses on application of content, focusing on real world application and interdisciplinary themes. This is what I was telling you earlier, that I'd like to mention the other things that you do as well, that weren't recorded in the video, that address these in task standards for a standard 5. Going back to standard 4, I do want to ask you some questions, because it's not very apparent in the video, what academic language the students were focusing on. Let me double checking your lesson plan. Uh, okay, it's not in your lesson plan either. So I wanted to ask you, like, what academic language did you introduce to your students for that lesson, or actually for these past few weeks?
So for this one, it was the Unit 5 vocabulary. So it was
Mhm.
a lot of vocabulary with shopping,
Bank,
buying, yeah,
right? Banking.
financial
Okay.
things. So like banking, things like that. So
Mhm,
there was three. If you go down to the bottom of the lesson plan,
mhm,
I shared my Google Classroom where I have all the list of everything. I actually made
mm,
a financial terms. I also added the slides for every type. There's
mhm.
phrasal verbs connected with financial, idioms connected with shopping, and things we would say generally. And I have them all in one area for them. So not only, and I made a digital dictionary for them, so they can not only just have me tell them, but they can look it up themselves and practice the research and things like that. Yeah,
Gotcha. I saw that. Like, I think that is an appropriate list, because you
yeah,
had words like, I think, a bank statement,
yeah,
right? That's definitely academic language that's appropriate for your grade 9 students.
yeah,
It's within their zone of proximal development, so that's great. I wanted to add, um, hopefully, something that's useful to you. Remember that when you give instructions, you're also using academic language. So things like summarize this text for me, or predict what's going to happen next, identify, compare, and contrast. These are all words that you use in your instructions during bell ringers, or speaking activities, or other activities in your class. So remember that these words are also appropriate academic language for your students.
yeah,
And I know that some of them, most of them, are able to recognize these words already, but some of them might still struggle with things like synthesize, right? That can be a more advanced that can be more advanced academic language for your learners. So just be mindful of those instruction words being part of your academic language, and along with your vocabulary words from the book. I think
Yeah.
this lesson actually lends quite nicely to the standards because the vocab list is well targeted to their level, and it's definitely formal, or the opposite. I guess academic language, we can think of it as the opposite of social language or
Yeah.
informal language. Our students like to speak to us sometimes very informally. So yeah, I think you definitely demonstrated that you
Yeah.
understand uh, these tools that are available to you to improve the students' academic language. Your representations, meaning your slides, your grammar, um, tables are always very helpful. Your explanations as well are very helpful to the students. So yeah, I believe that you've done outstandingly well
Yeah.
in this standard. So let's just go ahead and hit that. Do you have any questions about uh, representations, exclamations, and academic language?
I was going to add what you were talking about. I think one of the disadvantages we have at this school, where
Mhm,
we change classes and they don't, is like in USA. I used to have like a word wall with all those kind of like really important words, antonym, synonym, summarize. We would always like drill them in, and we use them a lot in when we
mhm.
do lessons. But I wish there was a way we could display them. Which I think is
Mm,
hard because their classes are not always ours. So it's yeah,
mhm. Gotcha. I see your point. I do really love having my own classroom and putting up
yeah,
posters and students'
yeah,
work. Um, it's great that for you, you're able to display your students' work in front of our office.
yeah,
So that's one way to show their work. But for words that they need to remember, like a word wall like that, I can suggest putting it on Google Classroom. That is your digital classroom.
yeah.
So if you put that list at the top of your Google Classroom, students can refer to
Oh,
that.
that's a good idea. Yeah,
Um, yeah. Okay. And your vocab list is already in the Google Classroom. So it keeps
yeah.
everything nicely in one
And
place.
they're all alphabetized. They're all separated by section, and they're all and I also have PowerPoints with images so they can search either way they want. Yeah, it gives them
Mhm.
a lot of variety.
Good. Okay. So let's move on to the second part of Standard 4, building on students' prior knowledge and correcting misconceptions. So I know that um, yeah, you have a good understanding of your students' current proficiency. Um, and were there any misconceptions during that lesson that you were able to, instead of what I want, what I'm looking for in outstanding is not just an understanding in the outstanding scale, is not just an understanding during the lesson, but preempting it, that predicting what the students
Yeah. So,
will go wrong. And I know you can do that.
well, with this, I really like to assess, and
Hmm.
like every assessment matters. And
Hmm.
when you see words that they're missing, you got to repeat them. So that's why like those finger things I do every day, and the Google Forms, they're always designed to just like hit the same. Like they're always built around words they're missing, and so I always
Hmm.
try to just review. So it's not just one lesson. I think it's like accumulation of all the lessons, and it kind of
Hmm.
leads to their success. And that's why I think my scores are always really good, because we drill the bad things, like the things they don't know, over and over again until they get it, and eventually they do. Yeah.
Yeah, your test
uh,
scores are great.
yeah,
The test scores are a great reflection of how well you've built on their prior knowledge, corrected their
yeah.
misconceptions, right?
But
Mm,
I feel like with assessments, like there was a group when they were doing the think pair share exercise,
mhm.
which is not completely on the video because I ran out of time. It was a long
It was a
video,
long
but
one.
yeah, but you walk around, you assess what they're doing, you say,
Mhm,
can I read this? And then you give them, and then the next day I gave them a Google form on some of the words that I thought would be that last year were the hardest for the students last year. And then
mhm.
I assess that, and then we'll go. So it keeps going.
Right. I I appreciate that you're taking a a data-driven approach
Yeah.
to understanding your students' misconceptions, um, because what what uh, what English teachers tend to do, and I'm guilty of this myself, is um, kind of predicting what the students will not get or
Yeah.
will use incorrectly. For example, we already know that our students, um, they often switch up fun and funny. For
Yeah.
example, how was your class? Oh, it was really funny. But what they really meant was it's fun.
Yeah.
It's a common error that our high students make. So I know you also have a bank of those common errors
Yeah.
that come up after having years of experience teaching at SJC. So thank you for sharing,
Yeah.
uh, Josh, about um, how you use formative assessments to correct misconceptions that the students have. Moving on to uh, content knowledge part three. This one, I know that this is one of your strengths
Yeah.
because you have been able to refine your instructional resources over the years, and you keep adding to them. You're adding, new games, new formative assessments
Yeah.
to them. So I know that this is definitely one of your strengths. I see you using technology tools in your classroom, a good mix of slides. You use timer consistently. You use Kahoot you used Kahoot at the end of that lesson.
Yeah.
And what's great is you're going back to those results, um, to to inform your next lesson. So I think, Josh, as far as instructional resources, you're also outstanding in that category. Let's move on to standard 5. Are there any goals that you still want to achieve in terms of instructional resources?
I always feel like it's never perfect, so I feel like these can always improve. I feel like as technology changes, there's always new things you can use. So that's kind of a um, I don't know. It's always that, and at the school we have this. They have a certain way of doing things, so I feel like you always have to adjust. So I feel like I always try to go as make it as, like we were talking about on the last video, where you try to do as much as you can with the school you're at. Like it's
Right.
but I feel like there's always room for improvement. Like you always say that, you're never perfect. Always do
Yep.
better. Yeah. So it's
Yep.
like
Nobody ever gets 100% at those observations.
no.
Because and I really appreciate that attitude as well, that things can always get better. Also,
Yeah.
your students change every year. What grade 9 students were interested in last year may not be examples that students this year can relate to. I'm sure you're using a lot of Mudeng in your current
Yeah.
in your current slides. Mudeng is everywhere.
Oh, it's
Okay,
so funny.
so yeah, as far as instructional resources, outstanding job. I can see your Google Classroom is very easy for students to go to and revisit these resources. The slides are broken up into bite-sized pieces, so it's not only great for in classroom instruction. I think it works great in the classroom, but also when the students are reviewing for their tests, it's very
Yeah.
easy to go to your Google Classroom, and you provide them with study guides. You provide them with um, all of the resources that you used in the classroom, and I think that is important, although it doesn't mention it here um, in the rubric. But I think it's great that you always put them all in one place, and the students can access them if they were absent or if they need to study for their exams.
That's one thing I've gotten better at, I think, over the years. Is like, I don't think my study guides when I first started were very good, but I think they've gotten better over time, and you just kind of learn little tricks. I was talking to another teacher today at lunch, and we were talking about, like, last year, we had that event, and so our classes got cut for like 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So I had to make like the best study guide ever. So I said that year taught me a lot about making study guides, because we had to rush to get done.
Yep, yeah. And sometimes, events like that can be a pain for us teachers, but something
Yeah.
you were able to make lemons out of lemonade, lemonade out of lemons. So that's I
So this
love
is our
that
sports
positive
day week this
attitude.
week, so it's coming up Friday.
I know, and again, you're gonna miss some classes,
Yeah.
but fortunately, it's gonna be done soon, and we'll
Yeah.
be able to get back in the classroom and teach without any missing students.
Yeah, that'll be wonderful.
All right. Application of content. So, um, in your in your lesson, there were a lot of opportunities for the students to connect what they were learning to the real world. You had them identifying shops. Um, the vocab was real world vocab that they will be using as they are turning into adults very quickly. One, and I think you also mentioned, I don't think you annotated this, but you mentioned academic day.
Yeah.
Or no, English fair. English
Yeah.
fair, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. English fair, I think that can be considered as a project to address real world problems because they are, engaging in enterprise. They are buying and selling and communicating with customers, and setting that up for them allows them to experience. It gives them a simulated experience of what it's like to be a business person, an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. So I think that's a great opportunity for them to address real world problems. In addition, and I think this is so outstanding job there, Josh. And I know there are critical thinking questions as well in your lesson, um, that allow the students to analyze problems more deeply, to discuss amongst their peers, and to present their solutions in the classroom. Lastly, the application of content part two is about multiple perspectives and interdisciplinary themes. Which part of your video did you annotate for this? Because let me check.
Oh, there's some parts.
The last part, played in teams, building collaboration, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And as well as promoting higher order thinking, uh, to assess the meanings of words. So I think those are great examples. But what was not in the video was is your work on PBL, and you've been leading PBL for the past few years now,
Yeah.
as the head of English. And to me, that is the pinnacle of interdisciplinary um, themes, because we're giving them a problem where they need to look at, environmental impact, at the maths, at the science of that, how they can make a social impact using the solutions that they came up with. So I just wanted to highlight that, because it's not something that we can easily show on
Yeah.
video. But I think because of that, your experience in managing the math, science, and English teachers to work together to come up with a project every semester, I think that's something to be noted in this assessment. Okay, and uh, this was an easy one, Josh. It was because I feel like you've definitely demonstrated outstanding performance in these two standards. Do you have any questions regarding my assessment, or would you like to discuss anything further?
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I think this is a tough assessment to show on video, but I think but I think that's why the lesson plan for this one is so important, because you have to, it's hard to show everything that teachers do, I
Right.
think. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I do appreciate your effort. This time I feel
Yeah.
like you move the camera around more so we can see
Yeah.
both you, the screen, and the students. I don't know how you did it in one period in a 45-minute class, but it was great to see the different parts of your classroom and not just
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. They always get kind of funny when I start waving in their direction. It gets them off task. So sometimes I try to point it away from them.
They did great. They did great.
Yeah.
All right, Josh.
All
I
right.
will continue to leave my um, detailed feedback here at the bottom, and I should be
Okay.
able to turn this in right after this call.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.